Today's edition of the Spot Track Podcast is presented by Bettor Edge. Visit bettoredge.com. Download the app in the iOS App Store. Get started today. Use code SPOTTRACK for $20 on the house. Check out the flash markets, your standard bets. Create a group bet. Create a competition. Create a bracket. Plenty to do. Reduce the VIG. It's the best social betting marketplace on the internet. That's bettoredge.com. My name is Mike Ginnitti. It is Tuesday, October 14th. Week 6 of the NFL season is in the books. That'll be the main focus today. Got a 5-pack of NFL discussions, some good, some bad. Then Dan Soemann joins to recap some Major League Baseball stuff, including a player opt-out, so a brand new free agent. Not super surprising, but notable for sure. And the unveiling of the 2026 Major League Baseball financials on Spot Track, which are now live for your viewing pleasure, your analytic pleasure. That includes arbitration estimates, 40-man rosters, projected payrolls for opening day based on those 40-man rosters. We've got market values live for dozens of players hitting free agency in the next couple of weeks here. And we should have some team-by-team analysis coming soon for all of this, right? Combined stuff, including some non-tender candidates, some trade candidates, some extension candidates, and obviously some analysis on these numbers, some of which are high, like your usual suspects in the Dodgers and the Mets and the Yankees, and some which are low, like your usual suspects in the Rays and the Marlins and the White Sox. But that's all live for your pleasure. We flip the switch to 2026, and Dan and I will be doing as much work on these as humanly possible over the next few weeks to not only keep up, but project out over the course of the next few months, because it's a marathon, right? November 1 to April 1 is Major League Baseball's free agency period, and that includes all the arbitration processes to go with that. So plenty to get to. More on that later in this podcast. Let's start with the NFL. It's been weird, for the most part. Big teams going down. The Chiefs are ish. The Bills are now ish. The Eagles are now ish. We're going to leave that for the experts and try to focus as much as possible on the contract side of the stuff, which is some quarterback issues, some breakout weapons, which we'll get to here. But I want to start with the first coach fired. I don't think this is super unexpected by anybody. It's kind of been a running joke internally here with some of us at Spot Track. And I think that running joke just kind of got all the way up to the front office in Tennessee, to the point of where heading towards week 7, Brian Callahan is out, despite the fact that he was signed through the 2028 season. He signed a 5-year contract with Tennessee last January. It's rumored to be around $3 million a year. So you can do the quick math on that. And he's going to make this full $15 million one way or another. I don't expect him to jump into another head coaching job anytime soon, but there will be coordinators who leave. There will be coordinator positions available. I expect he'll find something in the NFL over the next few months, but the timing is interesting, right? Because what does this mean for the Tennessee Titans in terms of where they're getting to, through 2025 into 2026? There's question marks. There's 6 names on our trade candidate list right now, and that doesn't include Jeffrey Simmons, who, teams are going to be calling about. There's no question about it, but they shouldn't probably be willing to move on from one of their core players just yet, because, Cam Ward's not an abomination 6 weeks into his NFL career, and if he had weapons and an offensive line to keep him upright, there's a version of this where that starts to turn a corner, and certainly that's what you're hoping to get to start 2026, which is a better version of Cam Ward, a better version of this entire franchise, because the post-A.J. Brown, Mike Vrabel era has not gone well, and they've got a young quarterback, a number 1 overall pick quarterback, that they've got to do right by over the course of the next few months. We'll see how they go about doing that, starting with this November 4th trade deadline. You can view all of our candidates up to date pretty much every day on Spot Track. It's the NFL Trade Candidate Tracker, which corresponds with our NFL Trade Machine. You can go and mock these trades up yourself, see how the money works, see who's got the cap space, etc., and play around in arcade mode heading towards that November 4th deadline. Justin Fields, I think we've talked about him a few times here. The Jets are now 0-6. Fields kind of hit rock bottom this week in London against the Denver Broncos. It's minus 10 yards passing. That stat's been thrown around exhaustingly over the past 24 hours, but it's notable because it's historic. 9 sacks against for Justin Fields. That's a notable number. Obviously, the wheels are falling off here, both for the Jets and for Justin Fields. The latter being the focus of our financial discussion here, which is that Fields is fully guaranteed at $20 million through 2025, and $10 million of next year is fully guaranteed. I talked about it a little last week, how, this doesn't have to mean that a divorce is imminent. If Justin Fields doesn't have the ability to go out and get a starting job somewhere else, and that's not completely out of the question. He's only 26 years old. There's obviously athleticism there, but man, the release rate, the decision making, it's not looking like he belongs as a starting QB, at least right now. But $10 million in a renegotiation with a 7th round pick trade isn't crazy. We have seen quarterbacks at this level, sort of hitting rock bottom like this, still move on via trade to a new franchise, who are just trying to add competition to their situation. So I'm not going to rule that out, but let's just get to the finish line here. And if this goes all the way through and the Jets struggle like this for 18 weeks, and we get to year 1 of Aaron Glenn, and it's an absolute nightmare, and some things have to start falling off, if Fields is outright released next year, it's a $22 million dead cap hit with that $10 million guarantee built into it. There's offset language, so if he goes and signs elsewhere, they'll get some kind of relief, right, in terms of a minimum salary. But as of right now, it looks like it's trending toward that $10 million being a flat-out buyout, and the Justin Fields starting quarterback era very quickly coming to a close here after really his 3rd stop, kind of his 4th attempt, 2 iterations of Chicago Bears staffs, a Pittsburgh Steelers half a season, and what looks like about 6 weeks in New York before I think we know enough to know enough with where this is headed for the Jets and Justin Fields. But we've been wrong before. This could be another situation where we're eating our words in 6 weeks and it's completely turned around. Certainly they have weapons to do this, but I don't think they have an offensive line to kind of carry themselves into what Justin Fields needs, which is time, and a lot of time. Atlanta beat the hell out of the Bills last night, especially in the running attack. For me, the takeaway isn't so much what the Bills aren't doing. The offense is sputtering. The defensive injuries are piling up left and right. That's a whole different conversation that we'll get to when Buffalo's not 4-2. Okay. But for now, it's just maybe a bad stretch of this season, and they've got time to figure this out with the bye week ahead of them. Let's talk about Atlanta, because they deserve this. They put on a show last night in primetime. A lot of that was star-driven. Michael Penix Jr. was accurate and lightning fast with his release. That's been his kind of mantra coming out of college in Washington. And, man, just a polar opposite to what we saw out of Justin Fields in London, by the way. So Penix knows where his weapons belong. His weapons are getting open. There's separation happening left and right, especially in terms of Drake London down the field. And Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and to a certain degree, Kyle Pitts, not so much last night, but over the course of the past 6 weeks, have been legitimate options for this Falcons offense that really kind of culminated with a breakout situation last night home against the Buffalo Bills and a depleted defense on that side of the ball. But Bijan will become extension eligible after this season. It's a contract we're monitoring every single week in terms of his production. As of right now, with 2 years left on the rookie deal, year 4, a 5th-year option. Let's tack on 3 years and about $57 million. That's $19 a year. So it's only Saquon who sits ahead of that right now. Derrick Henry's in that conversation. But in terms of his age, there should be no problem with Bijan Robinson getting past Saquon into the $21 million per year, 3 for 66, 3 for 65 range, tacked on to those 2 years remaining. Because this is the weapon of weapons right now in the NFL. And he's shown that enough now to warrant the 3-year extension after 2025. Drake London has been extension eligible, but his relationship with Kirk Cousins last year, give or take, didn't help him do many benefits. So he's been eligible since January. He's in year 4 of his rookie contract right now. There's a 5th-year option sitting for him next year. So let's tack on 3 years. You could probably get to a 4th, but the number we're looking at is the APY. And for Drake London, that has gone from truly mid-20s to start this season after last year's kind of flat year into the mid-30s. He's at 33 and change, trending towards $34 million a year. You're at tier 2 right now, if those are your numbers, if those are your allocations for an APY. And if this keeps up and Penix Jr. keeps firing this thing around quickly, there's going to be a conversation where we're approaching, I don't think we're going to get to CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase world, but we're going to be approaching that $40 million a year because just in 6 weeks of work with this offense, with the explosive nature that Drake London has sort of demanded out there, you can see his body language. He is demanding this ball. And it's not for financial purposes, though that will be the benefit. That will be the takeaway. And I expect both of these weapons to get a contract extension this offseason. So it could be a very, very expensive year for Atlanta, starting with January 1. And I don't want to leave out Pitts. All right. They did exercise the 5th-year option. He's playing on that $10 million and change right now. He's in the conversation for that Jake Ferguson extension, right? About 11.5, $12 million a year. So like a 4 for 48 maybe might be the ceiling right now. He's not going to have number 1 or first round production from a tight end. He is blocking well. He's doing everything that's being asked of him. So he is a factor in Bijan Robinson's success. He is an option. He is a good number 2, number 3 option for Drake London and Michael Penix Jr. out there. I think he's doing more than serviceable work. It's just never going to lead. It's never going to latch up to where he started, right? His entrance into the league was such a high first round pick for Atlanta, kind of at a time where they didn't have the ability to do this or shouldn't have wanted to do this. But he's here. He's lasted through his rookie contract. There's an extension on the table that's not going to be near top of the market, right? We're talking $18 million a year, probably 20 when Sam Laporte is done. Kyle Pitts is going to be about half of that, truly. And if Atlanta deems worthy of doing that and handing out 3 extensions this offseason, that's what we're talking about, okay? About $12 million for Pitts, about 34 for London right now, and respectively 20 to 21 for Bijan Robinson on an APY. It ain't gonna be cheap, but they have quickly fixed this defense. They'll continue to add to that, so that will accrue charges. The offensive line is in good shape when healthy, and obviously McGarry coming back. Many of these players were extended this offseason. Penix has one more full season before he'll need an extension, at least discussion-wise. So the time to strike with these weapons is now, in my opinion. So I expect a conversation with all 3. Probably Bijan and Drake get done. And Kyle Pitts might be able to test the free agent market and see what he can get and then come back to Atlanta with a matching situation. I don't expect a franchise tag, but it's possible, depending on how the next 11 weeks go in terms of Kyle Pitts and his production. But fascinating stuff for sure with the Atlanta Falcons weapons that are finally coming to fruition under the tutelage of Penix Jr. in 2025, at least to start the season. Some sad news, and then we'll get to baseball. Fred Warner, season-ending ankle injury, nasty one. Don't look at that one online if you choose to avoid those kind of things. But, man, this is just a player of players. He is the veritable veteran, the leader of a defense, just so well-spoken in terms of the game and the business of the game and how things are supposed to be handled. And you just hate this, not only because San Francisco's piling up injuries, but this guy specifically, as a ambassador of the NFL and of the game itself, you hate to see this guy sitting on the sideline for the next 11 weeks, but that's going to be the case. No timetable yet in terms of 2026, but here's the good news. He had just signed a 3 for 63 tack-on extension to kind of reset the off-ball linebacker market, which he certainly deserves to be doing. $41 million of that is fully guaranteed, so that's his right now. The injury guarantees stem through 2027 at about 57 and change. Unfortunately, there's $500,000 of per game active bonuses here. He's going to lose about $325,000 of that for the remainder of 2025. And like I said, no word yet on if this is going to stem into next season. But for now, 11 weeks missed, about $325,000 lost in terms of the per game bonuses. But he does have around 50 to 55 million locked in through 2027 because of what he signed this past May, extending in San Francisco. And then the only other note, and by the way, I've got a piece highlighting all these kind of notable NFL notes live on Spotrac.com. The only other note is it was a rough week 6 for backup quarterbacks, those who were asked to start for their respective teams. Mac Jones lost. Joe Flacco lost. The combination of Dylan Gabriel and Sherrod Sanders lost. Jacoby Brissett lost. Cooper Rush and Tyler Huntley lost. And, there's always an expiration date. So while Mac Jones has looked great, he's beat up. You can see him hobbling around. We just mentioned all the 49ers injuries, including Warner. So most of these rosters are depleted to a certain degree. because it's the NFL and it's week 6. Brissett looked good, probably had a chance to win that game in Arizona. I thought Dylan Gabriel showed a few signs, but as we mentioned last week on the pod, there was going to be a moment where Shedeur Sanders is going to get his look, because you're going to, what the whole purpose now of 2025 is those two players getting ample time to figure out who belongs on the 2026 roster at all, let alone with a chance to start. Flacco did look way better than Jake Browning, and the numbers certainly bear that out. They've got a decent schedule coming up here where maybe he gets a little bit more experience with this roster, with this scheme, and things look pretty good because he's done this now with 4 teams. So, this guy can step in and just play great football. And once he gets an actual concept on what the hell's happening out there with some of these players and some of their consistencies and their tendencies, that will only get better because, there are not a lot of quarterbacks, whether they're 25 or 40 years old, that have T. Higgins, Jamar Chase out there as options. So kind of happy for Flacco that if this is the swan song, he gets to do it on a roster that is worthy of him, despite the offensive line struggles. And he had a legitimate chance to come back and make a really splashy win in week 6. And then the Ravens are just, man, I don't know how they're like plus 200 for the division still, plus 150, I think it is. It's crazy because they're 1-5 in Baltimore, and they are as depleted as any team in football. Got worse this week. But I think in most of these cases, we're going to see the QB1s back in action. Lamar should be back week 8 after the bye. Kyler Murray is going to be iffy for next week, but within that should be fine. Joe Burrow's out for the year, and I think Brock Purdy's trending in the right direction for next Sunday night. So this could be it for many of these players. Now, Cleveland's going to continue to roll those 2 players out, and Joe Flacco is going to get the keys in Cincinnati TBD. But for the most part, teams are starting to get healthier. Even the bigger teams that are taking some hits in the mouth right now. And that's the nature of this thing. This is no longer 16 weeks and every week matters to the nth degree. This is an 18-week marathon now, and those extra 2 weeks do mean a lot in terms of being able to spread out, account for some of these injuries. You get the extra 2 players called up from the practice squad every game day. So we're seeing the benefits of some of that. But for some teams like San Francisco and Baltimore, there may just be no coming back from what they've had to incur through 6 weeks of this season and then some. Let's talk some baseball. All right, Dan. The second big opt-out of the year, right? Pete Alonso was unofficially the first in New York. Cody Bellinger, right across town in the Bronx, has opted out of his contract with the Yankees. Not unexpected at all. Something you and I have talked about here a couple times. I think where we differ is where this is headed. And his agent, I think he himself, when he got in front of the microphone, both kind of alluded to the fact that they're expecting this round of free agency to go a hell of a lot better for him and maybe for some other players who are in similar situations as Bellinger, Bregman, Alonso, etc. I know you're not super bullish on that concept. I know you think that players like Bellinger, who have kind of been roller coasters, year in, year out, players like Pete, who are 31 years old, Bregman's 32 going on 33. I know that you think that the game itself, that the front offices have just kind of become numb to this stuff, and they're not going to hand out 2 extra years of term, and they're not going to go full guarantees on players that they can simply just try to replace with pre-arbitration players, quite frankly. I know that's where much of this is headed. The Yankees are different. The Mets are different. Okay. So, and to some degree, Boston has had its moments where they've acted like Davids and not Goliaths. But do you expect Bellinger to walk out in free agency after another solid year and garner the 5 to 6 to 7 year guarantee? Or do you think that he's walking right back into some sort of option-laden, incentive-laden situation that he's going to have to year by year show that he's, a near 300 hitter, a 30 home run player, a 40 double player, etc. Something he's only shown a couple times in his career.
I guess ultimately I don't know. I don't feel comfortable saying where this lands. I think I'm just I think I'm opposed to him getting like the $200 million deal is how I've said it in the past. It's been several years of health and consistency, but I mean, we've seen He didn't go to the market last year on the heels of 2 solid seasons. He basically put up the same year, a similar year this
Mhm.
year. I don't think the positional concerns have went away where like he can play in center. I don't think you want him there all of the time, especially as he goes past 30 years old. So ultimately shifting to like a first base, potentially corner outfield spot. I don't know what that would do to his value either as we start to add term onto an overall deal. So on the record, I think he deserves one of the bigger deals this offseason. I'm a little hesitant on if we're getting into the $200 million range.
Okay, it's fair. I mean, in his defense, and it'll be easy, right? Because he's had such an up and down career to date. This is arguably his second best season of his career. The first being the kind of anomaly 2019 Dodgers batting title, MVP run kind of thing, where he hit 305 and 47 dongs and 115 ribs, and the WAR was 8.6. I mean, it's kind of historic Aaron Judge stuff out of Cody Bellinger back in 2019, which feels like an eternity ago. But it was a 5+ WAR this year, nearly 30 homers, nearly 100 RBIs. Obviously a major fixture in this Yankees offense. Is this a player the Yankees can afford to lose? Is the second question here, because I don't know that they're walking into another power bat very easily unless it's Pete Alonso, which I guess if we're talking about A plus B testing here, right? If you're A/B testing Pete Alonso and Cody Bellinger and it's for that first base spot, which both can arguably play, who are you walking away with?
It's a tough question. Maybe they are publicly jockeying that they're positioning themselves that this will go better because they anticipate the Yankees having to cut, not to say that this is Juan Soto again repeated because it's
Sure.
very different tiers of players here, but where they feel like they can't lose that piece in their offense. So it's a good point. I mean,
what's funny, Dan, they're 7 months apart in age. They both have the same agent, and basically both just went through the identical contract situation, right? Where they didn't get what they wanted the first time through free agency. Maybe that was a qualifying offer, maybe not. They opted out of, a salary that is beneath them, both of them. I mean, both of them are worthy of 27 plus per year, I think, in my opinion, and based on what our math says. But it's going to come down to years. And I think Boris has already come out and said Pete wants 7 years. I haven't seen any Boris connection to what Bellinger is going to be looking for. But do you think that Boris is just going to be dangling these two players out with identical situations because they align so much?
Probably they're definitely going to be positioned against each other. Well, I don't know how to put that.
He's definitely going to use it, right?
Leveraged, yeah.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, look, you watch as much baseball as anybody. If you had to just put one next to each other and you had a chance to sign each at a 6 for 180, let's just give them 30 a year on a 6-year term. Cause I think that's pretty reasonable based on what our math says. I know maybe that 7th year is going to be important because of how these things work, but let's just say it lands on 6 for 180. Who do you feel better putting in 6 for 180 right now? Cody Bellinger or Pete Alonso?
I'm betting on the power, and I understand we're talking about Cody Bellinger, who set records in his first 3, across his first 3 years. Maybe not set records, but has huge home run power numbers in his first few years in the league. That he's obviously transitioned to a different player after the chronic shoulder injuries. So I guess what I'm saying is we just saw him basically go 30, 100, hitting 270. I think that's his ceiling. The concerns around Pete are more like batting average, on base, how those skills develop as he ages. I think he's going to fall out of bed hitting 35 plus home runs for
And there might be another
basically
50 in his career too, still, right?
For sure.
That's still possible.
So if we're talking about position concerns with Bellinger, potential shift over to first base, I think I'm going to lean on the power. But that's just me. If there's other things that people think Cody Bellinger offers that I'm missing out on, I'd certainly be open to it.
Typical home run, launch angle, analytical.
I mean,
guy.
this is coming this is coming from a Cleveland Guardian fan who hasn't seen a home run since the 90s.
So. The guy who hangs his hat on Stephen Kwan bunting for a double every year, but yeah, I get it. All right, let's move on quickly. We recently launched our 2026 data, kind of unofficially this morning, actually. Anything surprising you as you start to fly through this thing? Because look, it's the usual suspects sitting at the top of the list and the bottom of the list, as I kind of alluded to in the intro, which is, your Dodgers, Mets, Phillies, Yankees, to a certain degree, Toronto, right? But is there a team out there that you're staring at, maybe with some of our opening day projections, that you just you're nervous about for what they currently have on the books based on what they may be looking at on the stat and production line in 2026, and could be, in line for an offseason sell-off, could have major trade candidates? I know that's another area you're working on right now. Maybe I'm thinking Houston, to some degree, San Diego, Texas. God bless the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, who still find themselves in the top 10 of tax projections right now. Any of those teams kind of standing out, Dan, as ones to watch from a transactional standpoint this winter?
Well, you said Houston, you referenced Houston. I mean, that's the team that I think is kind of in no man's land. We've sort of talked about the lead up to this point, with an aging roster, keeping that window together, compounding that with like a number of bad free agent signings over a span of years, to be honest. So what they do, it's going to be a critical offseason, I think, for Houston. That's a big one. I mean, themes, I really hate to say this, but themes I've noticed, some of these teams that flat out don't have any money on the books are in really nice spots. I say, like, the Athletics, it feels really gross, but if they ever really do want to commit money to this young core, if they want to commit free agent money, I should say, around this young core in a more like stable way, than just like throwing darts at Luis Severino, who's clearly was never happy from the day he signed that contract. But what I mean is that some of these teams, I think, with young cores and very little guaranteed money over the next couple of years, are in really good spots to kind of pop over the next few years here. I mean, dare I say the White Sox are trending in the right direction. This even goes, though, to like the Brewers, who
Look at the Brewers, 25th right now. 25th, could be in the World Series within a couple of days here. And that's kind of with a 40-man roster intact, right? They got about $22 million allocated to arbitration, according to what we're talking about here in projection-wise. They're in a nice spot roster-wise. It has nothing to do with like their tanking, their value. They have just kind of flipped the switch on the fly, like every team dreams about doing. And neither of us saw it coming. We thought it was going to be a major step back, and here they are in the freaking semifinals,
Yeah, and that's just a testament to that organization. Yeah. And I shouldn't lump these other teams, the Marlins go into this category too. I shouldn't lump those other low-spending teams right now into that group, because the Brewers are just flat out in their own tier from an organizational operation standpoint. And
you got to put your team there as well. Cleveland's with them. I mean, Cleveland does this every year. They start off in the 20s. They end up, maybe 19th at highest in terms of their tax payroll, but generally in the lower 20s. And that's where the Brewers will end up, probably 19th or 18th. They're not going to go hog wild, but it is understanding how to work the arbitration process, the extension process, and obviously draft and develop, right? Those two teams appear to be linked right now in how they're going to operate over the next decade or so.
For sure. Yeah. Whenever it looks like there's a lull in their development system, we fast forward to the end of the year, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's a bunch of nice guys in this system, that will keep them competitive, keep extending their window perennially, in my opinion. So
the Athletics, we're going to obviously dive more into this, but we have the numbers in front of us, so it's easy to talk about this right now quickly. The Athletics definitely look fun. and I think they're saying all the right things. And to some degree, they were aggressive because they had to be aggressive, right? They got slapped on the wrist last January by the league saying, look, at your COVID days are over. Start spending money or we're going to start to fine you and take away some stuff. Well, that might be over, but we'll see, right? They certainly turned a couple of corners here this offseason with some of their youth. They've got some talent that's marketable right now. You and I both want them to throw some money at the wall this offseason, but is the Sacramento thing going to stop that from happening? I mean, legitimately speaking.
Probably. I hate that I had to even lead with them, but it was
just they're fun, man. They've got a chance to be really fun.
Yeah, I just kept noticing these rosters with like only a couple guaranteed contracts on it. Are like, I'm a prospect clutcher, obviously, but it is pretty interesting the direction that they could go if they choose to commit financially going forward.
Yeah, we'll see that. I mean, they may be able to sell the idea of sign now, live through our situation in 2026, and then come with us to Vegas, right, and unveil this new stadium with guaranteed money on the books for yourself. But you're right. Generally speaking, that's a team that does not like the multi-year guarantee anything going forward. And if the league isn't slapping them on the wrist this season, they probably will revert right back to not doing that again. We've got other fish to fry down the road. We got to hammer the Rockies a little bit. That's for another pod. We're going to dive into the Orioles and what they might do. Same for Pittsburgh and the Paul Skeens era. But I think we're going to let the playoffs sort of digest a little bit here. And I know you're working a hell of a lot on some of the non-tender stuff, the trade stuff, the extension stuff. So we'll have plenty of content to get to before we go kind of team by team. But this is at least a nice early start into where some of these teams are looking like. For those that haven't seen the numbers yet, the Dodgers already project a $315 million on the tax payroll in our system. And of course, that's with the deferred compensation already accounted for. And the Mets, without Pete Alonso, are in 265. So the big boys remain big boys until further notice. And we'll see. We'll see which teams decide to get in that conversation. The Cubs could get frisky. There's a world where the Giants get frisky here this offseason. And Boston sitting at 206, about $40 million under that threshold. That's the team to watch, right? With all this youth that just kind of grew up instantly and in front of our eyes in 2025. They've got some pitching holes. They've got an Alex Bregman contract to figure out one way or another. And I would expect the Boston Red Sox to be in tax conversation this year, maybe within the top 5 when it's all said and done. So I think those are the early watch teams. And we'll see what kind of content you can give us down the road in terms of which players could be traded and extended in those regards, maybe with some of these teams in mind.
Sounds good.
Good stuff, man. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.